Send the Boys to Cinema in episode 56.
56?
56. Hope you're well, wherever you are, whatever you're doing.
Likewise.
This week, the Bikeriders.
Yes.
Jeff Nichols.
Jeff Nichols.
Who is the director of The Bikeriders.
He is, as well as some other films that we have both seen.
We'll discuss him, his career, and of course, his most recent release.
Mm.
And then we might also have a little chinwag about sort of representations of American criminality.
Or
portrayals of American criminality in cinema. That is a pretty big, beefy topic, and I'm not going to lie, we haven't done a great deal of research on that front. So we might, we'll skirt around that and maybe save a more meatier venture into that topic when we feel a bit more confident. But as the film, at least to me anyway, Bikeriders, feels so heavily indebted to like the work of Scorsese, it would be an amiss to at least not discuss it briefly.
Yeah, absolutely agreed.
So shall we get into it?
Let's.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Questing the cinematic void.
Jeffy boy, then.
Yes.
El Jefe. I think it would be sort of fair to say that he is very American.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
As far as filmmakers go, and not necessarily like sort of like flag wavy.
No,
sort of American, but he just in the sense that his films and his filmmaking sensibilities, his influences seem very much sort of sculpted by the land of his birth.
Oh yeah, completely. I think he's definitely more rooted in small town America, I think.
Yes,
and the suburbs or those kind of places in between,
the wild sort of lost spaces.
Yeah. Everything's sort of rusty and a little bit dated, and perhaps this town or kind of dwelling has been sort of semi left behind, at least in some instances anyway.
Yeah.
And that can kind of that's often one of the reasons why a character may do the things that they do, is their setting and their kind of environment. I think,
absolutely. Yeah. These characters tend to inhabit spaces, as you say, that are sort of rusty, forgotten places where either deliberately or not sort of avoided the gaze of contemporary society and all of the sort of trappings and complexities that come with it.
Yeah.
And that in itself creates a whole different selection of problems and issues and things to treasure and celebrate in equal measure. But I think you're right. I think he's very much someone that dwells in those kind of like very rural or at least sort of small town American spaces. Yeah,
definitely. If the digital switchover was happening in America, these places would be the last places they would be happening. But I think he kind of he likes the disruption, right? He likes a kind of order. I know this is kind of a narrative almost certainty, but this sort of disruption of things, whether that be a sort of outside alien force, I'm thinking Take Shelter, or a fugitive. He likes the disruption of something, a disruption of this kind of quiet American town, which weirdly I kind of reminded me of the Iron Giant a little bit.
Yes,
which I'm more than happy to bring up again.
Of course, yeah, always. It's that kind of like there's a duality to it. His films in these settings, because I think he's almost relying on preconceived notions about these places.
Yeah.
And then he, in the way he characterizes the setting or the people that inhabit them, like there is like they tend to reveal sort of a bit more depth or, beliefs or behaviors that may sort of go against those preconceived expectations.
Yeah.
So it's interesting in the one way he's very much relying on those settings, but he's also not ruling the people out within them.
Yeah.
Which I think is central to his sort of, a lot of his films, actually.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, completely. The characters are often, I guess, stereotypically troubled or maybe even marginalised by the sort of small town a little bit. I'm thinking more with like Mud and the Bikeriders and, to a certain extent, Take Shelter with regards to Michael Shannon's character and his sort of actions after he kind of he decides that the world is ending. Basically, that's the kind of that is the what the plot hinges on. But he seldom sets his films anywhere else. He's never set a film abroad. He's never really set a film outside of small town America, I don't think. Although I haven't seen Loving or his first film, but I think they are both.
I mean, even
set.
Bikeriders is sort of set outside of a major city, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. It's also interesting to note that Shannon playing a film about someone that is very anxious about the end. It's fairly, I wouldn't say it's sort of like common territory for him, but I just suddenly thought of Friedkin's Bug.
Oh, right, okay.
He sort of plays, I mean, that is the portrayal of the kind of mindset that tends to superimpose apocalypse on the world. There's a lot more visceral in Bug.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, no, it's there's definite parallels there.
Yeah, I mean, what I remember...
Late Friedkin would fit in that category of like small town America, you know, maybe using the stereotypes of the certain characters and people you would expect to see in those areas to the 8th degree, to sort of reinforce elements of his setting, I guess. But yeah, there's a small cluster of filmmakers that either drift back to or start or stay in these kinds of films, these kinds of spaces with these kinds of characters.
Yeah,
and their intentions aren't always sort of or the same. But yeah, I think we're definitely... I think you're right to say that Nichols is his characterization of these things is almost sometimes not quite as solid, as others perhaps.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think specifically with Take Shelter. I mean, how much do you remember of it? It's been a while since I've seen Take Shelter.
A while for me too.
Yeah.
Obviously, I remember the end really well.
This is it. Yeah, I remember that last shot with the tornadoes.
Yeah.
Really, really vividly.
Because it ends. I mean, spoilers. It ends up that he's right.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah. His wife sees it as well, Jessica Chastain.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I forgot she's in it. Yeah. But I do remember a lot of the film is like his family sort of becoming increasingly discomforted by him and his sort of his predictions of planetary destruction.
Yeah, he's building that kind of bomb shelter type thing.
Yes,
That's sort of the central. That is the narrative thread that goes through it. Is him like preparing, like physically going to like hardware shops and buying corrugated iron and stuff. But
it's an industry in itself, isn't it? That fear of apocalypse.
Yeah,
pretty big in America, isn't it?
I know. Yeah, I mean the space. I mean, for a start, the houses are, especially in the suburbs, are also huge that you could easily build one. I mean, like my garden, I'm thinking it's probably about 3 feet by 3 feet.
Yeah.
Not a chance.
Yeah, I'm not fitting one in mine either.
Absolutely not. I'm coming here. I want to be in the cities where it all goes down. No, what I'm thinking of is like I only remember that last shot really well, and I remember the atmosphere it generated was really quite unique. And I think the atmosphere it generates is sort of a definite kind of quiet uncertainty, which a lot of films try and fail to get right.
Yeah.
Take Shelter really gets it bang on. Like there's a bit where it's just a shot of a living room and everything starts floating. Do you remember that shot as well?
Yeah.
It's just like little pieces of the film keep coming back to me. And he just, the way he kind of makes you, the way that he makes you feel uncertain about it all, because obviously the kind of, your enjoyment of the film hinges on you looking for clues as to whether this thing is going to be real or not. And, which makes the ending, I think, all the more vivid in everyone's imagination. I just remember that shot of everything starting to float, which apparently was full CG. I don't know why I remember that, but it's like a fully CG shot. Yeah, it looks really good.
Yeah.
For 2011.
I think it's interesting, that film, in the context of, you know, whenever, certainly in more recent history, whenever the human race reaches a significant milestone, like the millennium or 2012.
Yeah.
Although the 2012 was made significant by the sort of claims of sort of the, you know, the destruction of the human race, but
yeah, that was an American interpretation of the Mayan calendar, which was just stopping, and that was it. It was just like there was an end to it. They didn't predict that the world would end on that day. It was just it was literally just like they ran out of paper or something, and that was it. But they obviously, that's a classic American thing, isn't it? To kind of, I think they're a bit uncomfortably fond of fear-mongering sometimes. Not all Americans, obviously, but certainly in the sort of Midwest, I think
there's a lot of, like, you know, within certain religions or certain sects of certain religions or certain collections of any kind of society, there does seem to be this culture and an almost an economy of fear. Yeah, that is, about the end of humanity, and it's almost, encouraged to be sort of this sort of perpetual fear. And I think the film taps into that idea of it really well, and in a way that sort of humanises the individuals that are succumb to it. Because I think there's a real tendency to look at those people and go, fucking idiots, But what is driving that? What is it that's actually making those people go to their hardware stores and spunk thousands, to build these sort of bomb-proof shelters and buy gas masks and 8,000 tins of ravioli, and I think there's something about that really works, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier in regard to Jeff Nichols as a filmmaker, and that you can sort of humanise these peripheral characters, these people on the fringes of society that, are often the butt of jokes because of the way they live or the beliefs that they have. And I think that's a real strength, as we've said several times already, a real strength of his filmography, and a fantastic performance from Michael Shannon, as you'd expect. Who's also in the Bikeriders, and is one of the stronger actors in Bikeriders too, despite not really getting a lot of the scenery. He does a pretty good job with it.
He does, yeah. He's always low-key fantastic. And he works really well with Jeff Nichols. Like, he's been in a few of his films. I think he was in his first film.
It seems to be like a really sort of fruitful working relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Michael Shannon's excellent at being inhabiting that kind of troubled character. It's also why I thought he was quite well cast as Zod, actually. I don't know why I quite liked him in that film.
Yeah, I thought it was great casting. One of the few things that Snyder got right about Man of Steel.
Absolutely. But
I quite like the first half.
Yeah, I didn't mind it so much.
Yeah.
I thought it was quite nicely shot.
Yeah.
Actually, weirdly, didn't look unlike a Jeff Nichols film.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, again, it's, Superman's origin story is,
is it the Midwest? Or
something like that,
yeah.
My American geography is dreadful, so apologies to anyone American that's listening.
All I know is East is New York,
West is LA.
West is LA, California, and then in the middle is probably Texas, and that's it. Like
Texas
New
is
Mexico,
south, isn't it?
Texas is south, and then
I definitely do that.
But in my mind, it's sort of it's all just a line. So if I think the middle of America, I do just think Texas. I don't know why, but even though Texas is it's like next to New Mexico, I think. But fuck knows, I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of other states. But going back to Shannon, I think he's just fantastic in anything he's in. Really, I think
his performances. He seems to be really good at portraying individuals who are being sort of gnawed at by anxiety or regret or fear.
You can see it in his face, can't you?
Yeah, and the front that he sort of puts up is kind of like disarmingly sweet. But even then, there's like an undercurrent of discomfort around him. I mean, going back to Bug, that's sort of it. He starts out as quite a nice bloke who's like a breath of fresh air for this woman who's living in an abusive relationship. And it's about trauma. Really, the film's about how trauma infects the brain, basically.
Okay,
I think he's a former soldier. In the Gulf War, so obviously he's got real demons, PTSD, I think. And she's obviously the trauma of having an abusive partner, and and how that impacts the way he sees his environment. It's quite a harrowing movie actually in that regard. But in the case of Take Shelter, it's a little bit subtler, and I think it's a bit more, as we said, in line with the more sort of fanatical religious element of American society.
It's definitely directed at, or at least the story is about, a kind of typical American family, but one with secret. You sort of, it is sort of almost a nuclear family, I think. And then
God-fearing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, but the thing that disrupts it in this case is so bizarre, and that's why the film works so well. It's just like you're kind of in his mind, really, because he's struggling, he's grappling whether if he's losing his grip on reality or not, and that's kind of a theme in the film as well. He has multiple doctor visits and stuff, and so he's not sure of he's not convinced himself. And obviously as the film progresses, he becomes more stable in his own mind, but we're sort of still left drifting a little bit. And I don't know, I just remember the atmosphere being so palpable and so like there was signs, there's constantly an alien. There's sort of an alien presence constantly hovering over,
sort of
over
omnipresent.
Yeah. It has that vibe about it, even though there's no kind of aliens in it.
No,
it sort of has that. That's about a kind of American family as well, and so I think it's quite unique in that aspect.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
His film after that was Mud. Am I right in saying?
Yes, it was. Yes, 2012. Yeah. 1 year afterwards, actually. Yeah.
Oh, really?
That film is 12 years old, Mud.
That is crazy to me because that doesn't feel like that older release. But I guess it was one of the first films that fueled the reconnaissance, right? It was like that. It was the film, I believe.
I think it was that. Yeah, it kind of Oscar tipped. He actually plays a role that I think he is now semi-typecast as.
Yeah,
totally.
But
at the time, it was quite revolutionary to see him not in like a rom-com.
Yeah.
And to kind of, I guess, chew the scenery a little bit.
Yeah, he's good in it.
He's great, yeah, he's really good. You see the same performance from him again and again, and not necessarily to his detriment, but this was the film that started it, for sure.
It's sort of like the film more broadly, I guess. It's sort of like a sort of American fable, isn't it?
Yes.
Which is very much Nichols' bread and butter,
Yeah.
And it's sort of fused with this coming of age story with a particular focus on masculinity.
Oh, yeah.
And how young boys' view of themselves and the behaviour of other boys and the way they view women.
Yeah,
it's sort of sculpted by past experience, the sort of looming spectre of past experiences, and the input of others, such as parents and all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting that the fable-like element of the movie sort of ties together so well with that sort of coming-of-age story element, because young people children do have an ability to sort of more effectively superimpose their imagination on the environment around them, and in the same way that Stand By Me does it. It's almost like what they want to see comes to life, and, and it's through those revelations that it's in those revelations that come as a result of that have a sizable impact on them as individuals.
Yeah, I didn't think about that actually, but it is. Yeah, he is kind of everything that they're looking for at the beginning, isn't he?
Yeah, he's like he's like a drifter, like a cool, sort of no nonsense, tough. Guy living off the land, doesn't need anyone, doesn't want for anything. Yeah. Until he does.
Yes.
He wants food.
He wants an emotional connection. I do remember when I was watching it, I think you're kind of meant to, as an audience member, be slightly uncertain of him.
Yeah.
Because even though he's all over the posters, he's not necessarily a kind of good person, or at least you're not led to believe that at first.
You sort of see him through the young boy's eyes, don't you?
Yes, yeah.
Which is the way the film almost plays a trick on you, because children are, not that they don't see complexity, but in terms of archetypes and characters, that is dependent on a lack of complexity that is subsequently revealed through the longer they spend with him, and they unravel his situation and his connection to his partner, and all that kind of stuff,
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's Reese Witherspoon's character.
She's the sort of the love interest, but even their relationship is sort of clouded by the sort of horrible messiness of their circumstances and their situation and the decisions they've made within that situation, and and through that the kids begin to realise not only his imperfections, but the imperfections of themselves and the propensity for those situations to make really bad people. There's that scene, I remember, one of the boys, he falls in love with another girl, and the girl rejects him. And that almost dovetails with the experience that he's had with Matthew McConaughey's sort of love interest, who's largely negative about him. And it's like he starts to think really negatively about women because he's been rejected, and all he sees is bad representations, but through the lenses of the key men in his life. It's a really interesting way that the film plays with that, and how young boys inherit the sort of worldview from those experiences, but those experiences are steered by people they either admire, or the people that they admire failing them.
Yes, which does happen. I remember there's a really, really kind of searingly good scene at the end where it's right before he gets bitten by the snake.
Oh, yes.
And he just goes, this Ty Sheridan, he's such a good actor, especially in this. I really like him.
Ty Sheridan.
Yeah. And there's just a moment where he kind of screams at him, every single thing you told me was a lie. I don't know why that line sticks
in the context, it works so well.
Completely, yeah. It's just like a culmination of everything that he's learned and everything he's experienced. And, it's just great. It's Stand By Me levels of great. And,
yeah.
Yeah, and obviously after that, this was an era of films where a lot of endings involved snakes. I think there was a lot of. I remember The Kings of Summer having a snake at the end, which was a sort of similar. Weirdly, like it was a medical emergency because of a snake bite.
Okay,
so it does kind of carry.
It ties into sort of biblical element, I guess, maybe,
yeah,
and that's definitely entrenched a lot more in Nichols's filmography, I think.
Yes,
I don't know if he was actually had a religious background. I assume he did.
Well, yeah, I mean, based on the setting of his films and
his relationship with faith in the movies, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, even Midnight Special that has kind of connotations.
Yes, for sure.
That are slightly, I don't want, maybe not Catholic, but certainly Christian.
Yeah,
for sure.
Oh yeah.
Mud is fantastic. Really, really earthy. I mean, that isn't meant to be a pun. I can't remember why it's called Mud.
He's called Mud, isn't he?
Is he? Okay, yeah, fair enough. But yeah, from what I remember of it, I've seen it a couple of times actually. It is really, really special. I do think it certainly launched Ty Sheridan's career and obviously revitalised McConaughey's, but also Reese Witherspoon as well. Obviously, she was in that film Wild, which I quite enjoyed.
I haven't seen that actually.
It's good. It's really good. It is. It's a little bit Into the Wild adjacent, with a bit more of a positive ending.
Okay.
But it's just interesting how because she had a brief kind of career revival from a kind of. I know she does a lot of producing, but from an acting point of view, she had a kind of couple of sort of more serious roles after.
Yeah, because she was known as a sort of, I guess, the sort of angelic. Blonde, wasn't she?
Yeah,
kind
completely.
of a symbol. Not necessarily in the sense that she was like a sex symbol. I mean, if you think about Legally Blonde, she was perhaps more of a symbol for like that sort of like women sort of pushing back in high flying positions, I guess.
Yeah, and kind of tamer Erin Brockovich.
Yeah,
sort of
exactly. Yeah. So to see her play a character like this, who is, a little bit more, I guess, 3-dimensional.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and she's really good in Wild as well. I don't know. I don't think she's had quite the same revival as McConaughey. Maybe that speaks to sort of Hollywood sexism a little bit,
possibly,
or just I don't know. But it was. I forgot she was in it, and you mentioned her name. I was like, of course, yeah. She works at a hospital,
It's strange. Again, it's a bit bad that I mean, obviously, it's all about McConaughey really in that film. He is the standout performance, so he's, if you've not seen the film for a while, you can forgive him for getting supporting players who, even though they are equally great,
yes,
upon reflection. Interesting to see the Bayou as a film setting. I was thinking just briefly as an aside, like other films, and I'm thinking of Hard Target,
okay,
with Jean-Claude Van Damme,
right?
I think that's a John Woo film.
I think it might be.
And Snake's in that as well. Jean-Claude Van Damme punches one.
It's an anaconda or something, or a boa, or
it's some kind of like viper or some kind of like
quite a small snake. Then, so I'm thinking if you hit one,
he just dangles from a tree and he just fucking kills it with one punch. And he has a mullet in that one. It was Hard Target, John Woo. I just quickly popped to the collection and have a look because I really like that movie. Very early Jean-Claude Van Damme. I think it was one of the first films that John Woo did after he left Hong Kong as well.
Really?
His first Western film, yeah.
It's set in the sort of swamplands.
Yeah, like maybe not the Bayou or, I know that's
the Ozarks or something.
Yeah, it's like, the American swampland. Another good film by Walter Hill is Southern Comfort as well.
Oh, nice. Okay.
That's good. It's about like a group of, I think it's like trainee reserves in the army that get picked off by local residents in the Bayou.
Okay. Any relation to the rum?
I don't believe so.
Or maybe the rum was named after the film.
Walter Hill, man, he's just so fucking good at, his career. His films are just so varied, but so sort of, connected by that sort of thematic and stylistic punchiness.
Yeah.
But it's a good movie. It's not his best, really, but
no.
As in the context of discussion about film set in the American swampland, it's Oh, is it? Did you have one?
I do, yeah. It's not a very good one, but it's one I saw quite recently. Where the Crawdads Sing.
Oh, yeah.
Which is like a kind of a novel you'd probably see everyone reading on a beach, like kind of like Girl on the Train or something.
Right, okay.
It's one of those novels.
Sort of like you can see it in about 20 years fitting snugly alongside loads of Danielle Steele novels in the charity shop.
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't read the book, but the film was pretty naff. It attempts to kind of generate the same atmosphere as your Muds or your Southern Comforts, or maybe even Hard Target a little bit.
Lots of slow motion, diving with pistols. Anything of that in Crawdad Sing?
I can't remember if I might have gone outside.
And that might have all happened, yeah. And no one made an allusion to who you were watching it with when you came back in.
Yeah, and they were just you missed a good bit. I was like,
yeah, sure. Yeah.
No, the problem with it is and I think that a lot of films can be guilty of this, is there is a kind of a cliche of who inhabits these places. And it really leans in on that. Like, kind of people all talk like this,
right,
this kind of thing. And I know there is a regional accent, but it's definitely riffing on it to appeal to like an international audience.
Yeah, there's films that sort of like that, and there are so many that sort of almost ride on the coattails of other films, like perhaps the films of Jeff Nichols.
Yeah.
But they don't treat the same sort of subject matter or elements of subject matter with the same nuance.
No.
In an effort, as you say, to sort of placate global audience expectations or beliefs about a certain way of life or kind of people.
Yeah, I think
there's loads of films like that, and I would sort of argue that Bikeriders is weirdly kind of like that.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think so. I think there is a sort of fetishization of a sort of culture, and I mean, I don't know anything about bikes, but it does have that.
I sort of saw it as both, but we'll go into that a bit later on.
Yeah. Well, like where the Crawdads Sing is, like, it's a dreadful title for a start, and also
isn't it?
It's just it's a mouthful, and it's just like, I don't know what the film should have been. It should have really lent into that kind of magical realism that a title of like that would generate, but instead it felt like a kind of, that Jason Bateman Ozarks thing. Like, it's like a rip off of that. It's just kind of a crime saga. Drifters. This family is like living simply in the swampland, and there's like an alligator in it. It's just like it's too real. They should have lent into the
mythological qualities of the assessment.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a shame. It could have been all right, but it wasn't. It was a painful 2 hours. That's a lot.
That's a long time to be in pain. Midnight Special.
Yeah. I remember this one out of the three of other films that I've seen of Jeff Nichols. I just want to remember the least, I think.
Yeah, but sort of departure, at least sort of on paper. I remember thinking going into it was quite a departure from his other movies, and then coming out and thinking, no, it wasn't actually.
Yeah.
It was quite, and that's what I quite like about him, is that he takes these sort of narrative archetypes and threads them into what we've already talked about. What I remember thinking about it was that it was kind of like a homage to the same way that what's that fucking film by J.J. Abrams?
Oh, Super 8.
Super 8.
Yeah,
I really liked Super 8.
I liked it. Yeah,
more than
Midnight
Special.
Yeah,
but like, it's in that similar vein of that sort of hark back to sort of like those family friendly sort of sci-fi setting, again, rural Midwestern America. Yeah, obviously pioneered by Spielberg with E.T.
Yeah, absolutely. And then coming later than that film, sort of Stranger Things, that sort of vibe.
That sort of, again, that fascination with the rural space and that, it being the entry point for a sort of advanced civilization. It's sort of interesting juxtaposition there, I think.
Yeah.
Again, not to discredit the people that live in those spaces.
Gonna get some angry tweets.
Yeah.
Or maybe one of them.
If I see you in the bio, you're fucked.
No, I agree. I think it is a lot more like his other work than you might expect. I won't recount the plot partly because I don't really remember what happens.
It's like a boy who gets like powers, right?
Yeah, I remember it handled really well, if I remember correctly, is how it's the unpredictability of those powers. I remember it being like he was sort of a ticking time bomb with it all. And I quite like that about it. There was a sort of, it's played by Jaden Martell, I think his name is. He was in It. He was he's played Bill Denborough in It.
Yeah.
And before that, he was in Midnight Special. But I don't know, I think there's a sort of string about kind of being a dad in it and kind of the unpredictability of children and kind of coming to terms with that. I remember that theme being in it a little bit. It's Michael Shannon, isn't it? Again, I think who kind of has to he has to navigate his way around an increasingly apocalyptic scenario with this kind of boy in tow who's got these powers, and I think he can kind of shoot beams from the sky or something, or he's in communication with a kind of alien force. And there's a great moment in I remember one scene set in like a petrol station where he just this kid just looks at him and goes, "I'm sorry," and then this thing just fucking comes out of nowhere and they have to run away. I remember it like being quite tension filled. Yeah. No, I don't remember much else about it, but I do remember liking it enough.
Yeah, I don't remember disliking it.
I think it might have, the ambitions of it might not have been realised as well as something like Super 8. Obviously, Super 8 has a lot of money behind it. And
yeah.
I think Spielberg must have executive produced Super 8
Abrams
or something.
had a bit more sort of clout.
Yeah.
And I think as well, like, I don't think it would suit Nichols too much to have loads of money.
Oh, God, no, I don't think so.
I think his kind of, like, his place in the sort of realm of Hollywood is slightly different to Abrams. I think Abrams is a very well-entrenched sort of blockbuster filmmaker, whereas I think... I mean, again, you know... I would argue that Bikeriders is perhaps Nichols sort of throwing his hat into the ring into more sort of mainstream filmmaking.
Yeah, certainly with the cast, I mean...
Yeah. But, I mean, it's important to point out as well that Nichols is, you know, he's not experimental or sort of on the periphery. Like, he's obviously a pretty big name himself, but he's not anywhere near Abrams' level in terms of recognition or
or
fame.
perhaps even confidence. I think it's certainly in the case with the Midnight Specials, it does. Whereas, like, Take Shelter was very confident with its themes. I feel like I do remember it being just like it didn't really land in a sort of genre. It was a peppering of different ones, which I mean, I need to watch it again because I think
I think you're kind of right about that. And even with Mudge, you could say that to a degree. I think there is something that holds back all of his films from being truly great.
Yeah.
They're great movies, but like in terms of like truly great films, I think you might be right about the sort of handling of genre maybe playing a role in that. Although,
it just needs a bit more conviction, I think, to hit the ground running. Yeah, I could have done a better job, mate. This is the thing.
Yeah, well, that's always the thing, isn't it?
But yeah, I think actually, you know what? If I do, I think it sort of jumps around streaming services. I always see Midnight Special, so I might see if I can watch it again.
Yeah, I'd like to watch that one again more than his other ones.
Same,
not only because I sort of scarcely remember it, but more so because it's the most interesting in terms of ways, in terms of his career.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, the ambition behind the film. You know.
Loving. I haven't seen Loving.
No, I haven't. Actually.
Which is a shame because apparently it's fantastic. I love Joel Edgerton. We've covered him briefly on this podcast with The Master Gardener. Always works with interesting directors. It's just, I know nothing really about it.
I think it's about a sort of mixed race marriage or relationship. One of the first, and the sort of the difficulties that they experienced, obviously, because at the time, it was illegal. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there'll be like a kind of court battle in it. I imagine.
I'm not. Yeah. Again, it's shockingly we haven't seen it, but one for the watch list.
Yeah. I will catch it because I quite like. There's an actor in it, Ruth Negro, I think, who's in Misfits.
Yeah.
And
she's a great actress.
She's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so always on the lookout for her, and obviously Joel Edgerton, as mentioned as well.
What appeals to me about that film is, you know, he's quite good at handling sentimentality in movies.
Yes.
And I think that would work well in the context of the sort of history that this relationship unfolded.
Yeah.
So, apologies for not watching it. We'll get around to it.
Definitely, yeah.
Bikeriders.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about the Bikeriders.
What were your sort of first impressions when you came out? Because I know it's a sort of quite a generic question to ask, but I feel like, you know, what I like about asking that question is how that contrasts with your opinions later down the line.
Yeah, okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, nice. Honest opinions upon walking out. I felt reasonably entertained by it.
Mm-hmm.
I personally thought the narrative structure was a bit too much in terms of it being far too much like Goodfellas. Obviously, you mentioned in the previous episode that there was someone called it Goodfellas on bikes or something.
Yeah, that was annoyingly that was in the back of my mind throughout most of my time watching it.
Yeah, performances were fantastic. It has, as I reflect on it, as like kind of the days have gone by, because I saw it about a week ago. My opinion of it has kind of lessened a little bit. I generally don't think I'm going to be kind of scrabbling to see it again.
Mm-hmm.
It felt longer than it actually was for me, which is something which, like, the opposite
never a good
happened.
sign.
No, it isn't. Yeah,
no.
The opposite happened when I was watching Goodfellas. So that fucking 3 hours, and it doesn't feel like it.
Oh god, yeah.
But I thought it was interesting when the narrative style of Goodfellas, it made the film quicker and kind of quickened the pace because you're kind of going through this entire saga. This did the opposite. It felt long and drawn out, and there was a lot of interviewing, and whereas like those scenes were probably some of my favourite scenes actually, when they're just talking about what's going on, like Jodie Comer just kind of explaining her plight.
It's a great performance from her.
Oh yeah, really good. Yeah. I don't know really. I don't think I'd recommend it to many people. I feel I don't identify at all with motorbikes. It doesn't help.
No.
I find them loud and annoying. And the culture surrounding them, I'm a bit baffled by. Although I was semi-educated by this film, and I quite liked the stance it took on masculinity and gang culture, and how that can start out incredibly well intentioned and go sour. I really like those themes, but so yeah, a real mixture. I ultimately, and it has waned since. What about you?
I came out of the cinema thinking that it was sort of quite just fine.
Yeah.
I don't know, like I thought it was a real sort of paint by numbers exploration of American criminality.
Yeah.
And I know that's a very well-mined or well-trodden turf, because obviously lots of filmmakers from their respective backgrounds explore the sort of dominant criminal hierarchies that were maybe in and around their lives.
Yeah. And
obviously a lot of that started, not necessarily like officially started, but you know, the stylistic exploration of that was pioneered by Scorsese, and I think a lot of filmmakers are sort of indebted to him in that way. Whereas I think there are some that don't necessarily lean on him too much. I think, you know, like John Singleton, for example.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I think he takes a completely different approach with it. That's fucking great.
Yeah.
But so I don't want to say that it's all Scorsese, but like, you know, in the context of this film, it really is all Scorsese.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, there are so many films like it that just lack that sort of, again, what we were saying earlier, that sort of willingness to take it somewhere new, you know, which is sort of held back his other movies a little bit. I think here it's like glaringly obvious that he is just really sort of indebted to the almost very tired tropes of this kind of movie.
Yeah.
Because there are so many films like it. What's that film Johnny Depp where he plays the fucking is it Black
Mass?
Mass, like those kind of films, like films that like undoubtedly have an interesting subject matter, but just don't do anything with it other than sort of just like be paint by numbers and bang average. And that was my initial response coming out of the movie. I felt that, and I felt the same about the sort of thematic element of the film, and that for me is actually something that's improved for me.
The
performances were good. I'm not so much anti Tom Hardy, but I'm not that big a fan.
I'm glad you said that. I was very mixed on his actual
he that sort of growling thing that he does, I know that sort of like works for a lot of people, but that didn't really do much for me. But I thought Jodie Comer was great. Austin Butler was pretty solid. Shannon did really well with those sort of like more area scenes. They did really, you know, I thought they were like some of the stronger moments in the film.
Norman Reedus as well, really
yeah,
good.
Reedus was good. He sort of came in. So yeah, and then as time's gone on, my relationship with the film has been very much the same.
Okay,
I've just felt that it was so indebted to a certain formula that tells a story quite efficiently, but it doesn't do it in a way that, you know, makes it any more interesting or engaging, or you know, it had this sort of, like you said, you know, indebted to Scorsese just down to every single detail, like the use of period music, the transitions,
the ending,
the way the characters are introduced, you know, like I just thought fucking hell, like I don't know, maybe like he's relying on the fact that most people haven't seen Goodfellas these days. I don't know, maybe that's like a twatty thing to say, but do you know what I mean? Like it just felt so almost bordering on derivative.
No, completely.
And that sort of bothers me sometimes. Like I don't mind homage if it's done in a certain way, but you know, this was done in a way that just felt, again, incredibly formulaic. You know, and what I did like, as you said, was the handling of like masculinity that tends to underpin a lot of these sort of big criminal enterprises. And I liked the sort of stakes were kind of quite low.
I didn't consider that, but thinking about it, you're right. It never
became like an expansive operation. It never felt like.
Well, that was the downfall, really. Like when that, I liked that, and I know this presumably was based on research, not screenwriting. But that was the downfall of that's the whole point.
Culture,
when you expand, you crumble.
Yeah.
I liked that about it a lot. I agree with you on that. Yeah, completely. But I didn't consider that until you mentioned it. I was like, it was really low stakes, wasn't it?
It was, and it's sort of like
it's a group of blokes.
Yeah, like it's sort of, there's something quite sort of like childlike and sort of tragicomic about it, which I quite like. And the way that it's sort of like, you know, the way the narrative is like about interviews from the guy who wrote the book that the film is based on. So, So he followed these bikers around at two periods of their sort of trajectory, once near the beginning and then once sort of towards the end of what is considered the death of the golden age of motorbike gangs. But like that sort of narrative of like getting interviews and stuff, it felt like, I don't know, it sort of heightened the sort of like tragicomic, childlike nature of the character's predicament. Which actually kind of worked for me. I quite liked it.
I think one thing I did like, which kind of echoes what you were saying there, was the fact that they kept talking about picnics. And they
got picnics together.
And
that's quite cute.
It was really sweet. It's such a straight, because when, you know, I guess this is sort of my Britishness coming out, but when I think of a picnic, I think of like yogurts in a hamper with a sort of tartan sheet in a field.
You borrowed from your grandma.
Maybe when you're 18 you have a cider or two, and but not like but what they mean is like a big kind of gathering of these blokes on
leather
bikes,
clad bad boys,
and they'll kind of bring their wives and get
loaded.
Hammered.
But
it was funny that they kept calling it a picnic. I don't know why, that just kind of came back to me.
More broadly to what we're just talking about. I like that. It's a good thing to. No, I thought it was interesting, like, because what the film does well in that sort of, to stay with that, is like it sort of penetrates the sort of like brake oil covered leather clad exterior of these sort of brooding figures. And it almost, it's like they are quite aware that it's an act, that even they know it's an act. There are bits, you know, Jodie Comer's character makes frequent allusions to their sort of cowardice. And the fact that they won't wear their colours when they're just them. Or the fact that a lot of them don't like fighting. You know, so there's this whole idea, because it's based on that Marlon Brando film, isn't it? He watches that, I forget the name of the movie, but you know, Tom Hardy's character watches it, and that's what starts it. And even that has like a childlike quality to it. Sort of the idea that
he's going to buy a bar just because
and the motorbikes and the boys, and like even though they end up sort of doing quite morally questionable things even before the things start to really slide, like, you know, it really is about belonging to something, being in a tribe, feeling like an outcast, and just sort of like being suckered in by all of the sort of iconography and the clothing and the look.
it becomes them. Like, you never see Austin Butler really not inhabiting that character.
Yeah.
Although, like, what I like about his performance, and I've already talked about my kind of feelings towards him as an actor, but I liked how he let those sort of like sneak peeks of his actual personality shine through on occasion. But that, and then, you know, simultaneously, it's my problem with Tom Hardy's performance is he didn't really have that.
No.
He was just a kind of grisly, kind of not just unkempt bloke who was, by all accounts, a bit of a prick. Like, I never really got that three-dimensionality with Tom Hardy that I did with Austin Butler and his performance. There is a sweet scene near the end where Tom Hardy knows he's gonna, spoilers, like, he knows he's basically gonna die, or he knows
he gets a sense that something's
something's changing, and there's a conversation between him and Jodie Comer's character, which is like probably the closest he's ever gotten to
bonding with her.
Yeah, that's quite good, but that is
he does
quite
have
isolated.
chops, man. Like, I'm not saying he can't act, I just think he's really sticking to this kind of acting. I don't know, like, when I think about his performance in Bronson, it's chalk and cheese.
Yeah, it is.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I know we have a lot of people in our circle that really don't like him, and that's probably rubbed off on me a little bit more than I wanted to. But I just feel like in this film particularly, he's just that scene is good though. He shows chops there.
That was the one moment where I thought, okay, you're showing something here. I needed more of that though, because I don't like you. Like, I didn't like his character. I thought he was not miscast, but I thought it was stereotypically cast.
I think it was kind of interesting that, like, all the stuff about, like, when you have a disagreement, you have to fight with fists or knives and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's an air of reluctance to it. It's almost like, you know, I should do this because I sort of have to, because this is part of the look of it. You know what I mean? Not necessarily because I want to, or I feel like a certain sense of honour, or everything felt like a performance, which I think is, again, one of the more interesting things about the film in its representation, particularly of masculinity in sort of organised crime, because that's something that Scorsese explores as well, this sort of sense of belonging, like, you know, Ray Liotta, from the very start, ever since I was I want to be a gangster. You know, it's so central to the identity of him that he gets this role. And everything else sort of, you know, is an extension of that. His behaviour, what he does, you know, it's all in service of being a part of something. Which is ultimately, you know, falls apart in the face of, like, you know, the pressure from an exterior force. In the case of Goodfellas, the United States government. Whereas in the case of Bikeriders, it's, you know, this new breed of bike riders that join the group, isn't it? Sort of the people that have come back from Vietnam jaded and fucked up, and
or disenfranchised youth as well.
Yeah, exactly, which is another sort of key theme, isn't it, with that young chap who ends up taking over. Spoilers.
No, that's right. I mean, that was kind of interesting though. I liked how they played with the changing, you know, the kind of changing generationally. Like, there's this group of blokes who basically just want to hang out and be a part of something.
Have a couple of fist fights, but really get pissed with each other and drive around on motorbikes.
Even like other factions that have been created, like, there's never any real animosity. Like, there's one bit where it's like, you scratched my bike, man. There's like a square off, but they end up being sort of friendly with each other. And that was unexpected for me. I was like, okay, I thought this was going to be the start of the, you know, the kind
factional warfare.
Actually, it was sort of semi-innocent. I mean, Butler treats it slightly differently, which is, I found sort of interesting. But then, how they deal with new people coming in and taking it perhaps more seriously than even they do, to the extent where they don't, you know, because they're not as sort of rooted in whatever, like, families or anything. They are more prone to, like, genuine violence and genuine kind of conflict. And that was probably the strength for me, and evidently I imagine that's probably actually what happened as well.
You just really got a sense that before the shit hit the fan, that a lot of them were sort of making more out of it than it was. It's just a group of blokes just sitting around in a pub getting hammered every night. But in their head, it's this sort of, like, fully organised sort of machine. And it's actually becoming that machine that destroys it, because it, you know, ultimately descends into a fully fledged criminal enterprise that runs drugs, prostitution, and that shift is what sort of ends up, you know, again, signals the end of what is perceived as, quote unquote, the golden age of motorbike riding.
Bikeriders, again,
terrible title.
Not a very good title,
but the book is called that.
So
maybe that's, you know, maybe it's sort of got his hands tied in that regard.
I guess I've never heard of the book, but I guess it must be popular amongst
Yeah, it's
people
more
in the
like a
States.
photography book, isn't it? Because the guy that followed him was a photographer.
Yeah, he keeps mentioning that he might write a book someday. I thought it was quite on the nose, but I didn't hate it, but it was quite on the nose.
Yeah, definitely.
That narrative trope is kind of how it ties into the whole Goodfellas thing. Is this guy narrating it and explaining, and there's like time jumps, but no one ever seems to get any older. I always think that's kind of bizarre. Also, from a sort of, I guess, visual standpoint, in a sense, that it does, like the genre cliches are like flopped out in front of you, and that really grated on me occasionally, like even down to sometimes to even like Austin Butler's performance of, and I know that's part of the theme of kind of belonging and cultivating an image, a kind of James Dean-esque image, right? But it did grate on me at times. I was like, I don't care about, you don't need a cigarette in your mouth every scene. There's just so much smoking in this film.
I think Nichols could have lent into that way more, the sort of like, and not in a way that necessarily made fun of it. Like, because I felt the film was actually quite sensitive in the way that it portrayed the sort of toxic elements of the masculinity.
Yeah. Oh, but down to the red dress bit as well.
I mean, like, that was a fucking horrible moment, but like, I feel like you could have lent into that more, and I agree with you, not sort of sticking too rigidly to the sort of brooding, cool guy image, because the film didn't necessarily have the conviction to sort of make more, not necessarily critique it savagely, but you know, explore it in a more meaningful way, like he suggested it was going to do, and did quite effectively, sporadically throughout its narrative. I think you could have lent into that element a lot more.
Same,
and it perhaps would have been a bit more meaningful and a bit more impactful in the long run.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I agree with you.
I think that it does break from it occasionally, but nowhere near enough. Like, there's a moment where it's winter and everyone's not riding bikes because it's cold. Well, that was quite funny.
Yeah. Again, there's something tragicomic about it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
they're all just like huddled around the heaters in their cars.
I'd love to know I'm sure, was it deliberate? I don't know.
I hope so,
because if it is, again, it's a shame it's not in it enough, but if it, that's very well done to him. Tip my hat to him.
Yeah. My parents visit Brighton every year for this festival thing, and there's apparently quite a lot of bikers, or the
it's like mods and rockers, isn't it? That was the ultimate sort of battle in Brighton.
Exactly. And so they kind of it's almost like a pilgrimage for them. But it kind of echoing what you were saying earlier about the sort of the reality of this versus the kind of the idea is like none of them are drinking because they're all driving and they all have to drive, so like they kind of say it's quite funny seeing these kind of big burly blokes with this kind of sunken eyes and huge beards, and they've all got a ginger beer. I feel like this film kind of has a bit of that occasionally. I mean, they're not concerned about drink driving in this.
No, and again, I don't think it was illegal then.
I don't know, or at least probably. I think maybe the idea of a DUI in America probably wasn't as common or like.
Again,
or
if you're
enforced.
American, please write in.
Please do, please.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? It does poke into that idea of willingly surrendering to an image, a masculine image.
Yeah,
and doing it unabashedly. Which is sort of almost quite sort of sweet, but ultimately doomed to a sort of trajectory of failure. Which again, it seems to be central to a lot of the kind of archetypal gangster films that deal with their respective cultures and their respective sort of sects of criminality, if you will.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm struggling to think of a moment when the original gang actually kind of engage in an overt act of criminality.
They don't. The only time is when Austin Butler gets battered by those two blokes, and they burn the building down.
Yes, that's right. That's quite a pivotal moment in it.
That sort of signals the shift, and it's almost like, again, another quite interesting element of the film is, for all of this sort of posturing, they're kind of terrified of what the future holds for this club.
Yes.
Like the original group. Like, like they just want to ride around in bikes, as you say, get pissed.
Yeah.
Maybe getting the occasional scrap. But they don't want to be like, doing the kind of stuff that a lot of these new members who are joining en masse, like a lot of people are coming back from Vietnam with PTSD and addiction issues.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have come back with a much more negative view of America.
And they
have to grab their slice. You know,
they see it as a kind of act of rebellion, I suppose, as opposed to.
It was always rebellion, but the rebellion in the sort of original sense it's a lot more sort of subdued than the rebellion that sort of took post-Vietnam. Well, not post-Vietnam, because obviously Vietnam was raging all the way through the 70s, but you know, it certainly as more people started to come back, and that sort of new age, it ties interesting with the sort of ideas of new age of Hollywood. You know, if you think about the sort of the rebellion in like Nicholas Ray films with like, as you say,
Rebel Without
Cause, like, was that Nicholas Ray?
It was, yeah. Oh, good.
Yes. So the rebellion in like Nicholas Ray films with James Dean is different to the rebellion in the films of like Martin Scorsese, like the early 70s, late 60s, the Easy Riders, those kinds of films. There's a distinction in the rebellion.
Yes.
Doesn't mean they're any less sort of powerful in their own setting, but there's a lot more. It's a lot more visceral in the 70s, and that could be an interesting comment on the nature of the sort of cultural shift in itself. And the sort of the bubbling disillusionment, which was so easily, perhaps more easily contained in the 50s and 60s. I mean, I know certainly from a filmmaking perspective, if you were going to make a film that was critical of American society, you had to thread it into something that would appease mass audiences. You know? And those films that didn't either got censored to buggery or no one watched.
They kind of got lost to time. Which is a shame, but I suppose that's just how it is. Yeah.
I mean, I think about like filmmakers like Sam Fuller, like his early movies, you know, like the Crimson Kimono, like, you know, that brilliant film, but I don't think I did particularly well because of the subject matter, because of the way it was presented. It strayed too far away from the sort of, you know, the safety of the noir genre, which again is hard-boiled and cynical, but it, you know, it's very overt in its criticisms about the society that the film which is made, which is why it's so brilliant and such a gem of that era. But in that time, it was never going to be received as well as it is now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like the film is, you know, Bikeriders, that shift is indicative of that broader cultural shift.
Okay,
which I think is interesting, and I think the film perhaps doesn't play with it as well as it could, but I think the allusion to it is maybe enough to sort of give it some brownie points in that area.
No, definitely. Yeah, I do think it's.
That was a lengthy ramble.
No, I like it. Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to hear it because I haven't talked to anyone. I went to see it on my own. I haven't talked to anyone about it.
I went to see it with Georgia.
Okay, yeah. Like, what did she think of it? Actually?
I think she quite enjoyed it. She's a really big fan of like Sons of Anarchy and stuff, though. I didn't really make the connection in my head. I wanted to ask her what the relationship between that series and that film and Bikeriders is, because I know Sons of Anarchy was a huge thing.
Yeah, I've seen a bit of it.
It was massive. Like, I think I've watched like 2 seasons and I quite liked it. But like, again, I'm just shit with TV shows, so don't take my view on TV too seriously. Don't take my view on films too seriously. But I just think that I'd be interested to know, because like you said, sort of quite near the beginning of the discussion, like there is a sort of fetishization of the biker.
Yes,
particularly the American biker.
Yeah, completely.
And I'd be interested to know how much of that is sort of used in Sons of Anarchy, and if that has sort of helped to almost generate interest around Bikeriders. I don't know.
I think it did.
If you'd help us answer that question, please pop us a message, because I know particularly a lot of people in our circle that really like Sons of Anarchy. So please give us your...
Dear friend Gordon I watched like the first 3 series of it with him, I think. Yeah. I wasn't nearly as taken with it as he is, but he rides a motorbike for a start, so he has a vested interest in that culture. I just, I was never really exposed to it that much. When I just... All I think when I think motorbikes, I just like, they're just loud and they sound like they're broken. They're not. The engines are meant to sound like that, but that annoys me about them. So I have a personal slight vendetta against the idea of that kind of thing. I think it speaks a little bit to people masquerading as being more masculine than they perhaps are. I don't know, and I know it's more nuanced than that, and I know. Like, there was a lot of storylines in Sons of Anarchy which were really interesting and quite kind of progressive, oddly. But
it's there's a reason why it's so universally adored. I don't think it is just because of the iconography of the motorbike rider. I think there's more going on there than meets the eye. But I'm just interested to see, if anyone could please honestly send us a message on Instagram or pop us an email, cineboyscinemen@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Not checked in.
We hope.
No, please do, because it'd be interesting to, if there is a link between these kinds of things and what that says about the sort of culture and what your interest is. Because again, I'm not particularly negative about motorbike riders. I must admit, the image in certain situations I think is pretty fucking cool.
Okay.
But again, I think it's hard not to see it sort of from the lens of, as a try-hard thing. But that isn't necessarily the individual who's driving its fault. It might just be the culture that surrounds them. It's that kind of thing.
That's exactly right.
And I wonder if that has sort of made this film... I don't know, how well is this film doing? I've not really heard a lot of people talk about it, man.
No,
the marketing run for this film was fucking crazy.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
they had them all in helicopters, and then when the film was premiered, they had people on motorbikes, gunning it down the street and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I think they really, really sort of hedged their bets with this one.
I mean, it's the cast is obviously going to have to be paid quite a lot.
It's hench. It's a good, as terms of star power. I mean, you've got Austin Butler and Jodie Comer, who are people that have been around a while, but they're really starting to find their feet. You've got the old guard. I mean that in inverted commas, but someone like Tom Hardy, who always draws a crowd. Norman Reedus has got a pretty big following.
Oh yeah, Walking Dead.
He's
a kind of Southern American sort of that inhabits that quite successfully, I think. More so even than Charlie Hunnam, who's English. But I know he wasn't. I know Charlie Hunnam wasn't in the Bikeriders, but he was.
He's Geordie, isn't he?
Yeah. I find it odd that he was cast as the lead in Sons of Anarchy.
Yeah.
I do quite like him. I quite like him in Pacific Rim.
Yeah, he's pretty good, isn't he?
Yeah, he's quite good. He works with Del Toro as well, quite a few times. I think he was in Crimson Peak.
Oh man, it's been a while since I've seen that movie. I saw that film in Leamington Spa.
Really?
Yeah, my friend Ollie. I actually quite enjoyed that film.
That's a good film, yeah. He's good in Lost City of Z as well, Charlie Hunnam.
Oh, that's a great film.
That's James Gray.
James Gray, yeah, I like that a lot.
I'd like to talk about him at some point, actually.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
He's doing all right. I don't think it's made his budget back yet. It might have a bit of staying power in the United States. I don't think it was ever going to be a huge draw in the United Kingdom because that culture isn't... It's few and far between.
It's not as well entrenched, is it? The sort of motorbike...
Harley
is like a part of the American, the sort of identity, the multifaceted identity of America. You know what I mean? It's a mainstay image.
Yeah.
To me, anyway, as an outsider looking in.
No, agreed. Yeah, I know absolutely nothing about the actual bikes, apart from the fact that they're probably quite loud. Yeah, and I think it's doing okay. I think it's
what was his
reasonably
budget?
tepid.
Out of interest.
30 to 40 million. Uncertain.
So it's a mid-budget film. I mean,
Cast. Yes, they're rare. Aren't
we're sort of craving those. I just want ones that aren't so fucking paint by numbers. I think we've talked up the elements of the film that work really well. I don't know, leaning into that more would have worked for the film.
Yeah,
in my view.
So. Yeah.
It just feels like his most mainstream film to date.
Oh yeah.
By a significant margin, and that sort of worries me because. I do like him as a filmmaker. He's not someone that I think of a lot, but when he makes a film, I'm always interested and I'll always check it out.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
his work speaks for us. I think as we may have been a bit critical about it in films in the context of never being truly great.
Yeah,
but his films are very good. They're good sort of American fables, which is something.
Yeah.
That, again, from the outside perspective, is really fascinating.
Yeah,
I keep an eye on him, and the fact that this film's quite sort of mainstream, I don't know, that worries me slightly.
I hope maybe he goes back as opposed to forwards a little bit.
Yeah, you don't want him doing a Marvel movie or anything.
Oh god, no.
And maybe that'd be a bit of a jump. I don't think he would, but
imagine if he did and it was amazing.
yeah.
That was blowing me away.
Yeah.
A 3-hour epic.
Yeah.
Somehow just come out in floods of tears. It's all thanks to Jeff Nichols. No. I'm pretty mixed on it. Jodie Comer is really interesting. If you see The Last Duel, I don't know if you've watched that yet.
No, I've still not watched that. No,
she is so good in that. Low key, fantastic.
She's a fucking phenomenal actress.
Yeah. Really, really keenly aware of how I think her career trajectory is going to be one that I follow, and I think she's going to choose her roles quite wisely.
I think so. Yeah, definitely.
Her action didn't grate on me. Remember that first scene in the lawn, in the laundrette, and I just thought, oh god, here we go. Like, this is going to be that classic kind of like mums in the laundrette with sort of spiky glasses, 1960s, 70s kind of vibe. And then she started speaking. I was like, oh no, she's bossing this. This is great.
Yeah.
I'm really
She's
on board.
a Scouser as well. So I mean,
I can't believe that.
like the fact that she can really, I don't know. I guess Liverpool has a pretty strong Irish influence as well. So I don't know if that would have helped.
Maybe. Yeah.
Who knows? Spitballing here. No, I'm the same. Pretty good movie. Okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
But obviously, as always, really interested to hear what you guys think.
Yeah.
Although we probably haven't said that at the end of most of our discussions, but feel free to drop us a message. We have had a message from Jack, actually, my mate Jack.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he was asking us about doing an episode about films with twists.
Oh, okay.
Which is a great idea.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah. So I did.
How they handle the twists.
Yeah, like good twists, bad twists. And I have replied to you, Jack, on the Instagram, but I'm sorry for the late reply. I did a sort of Smythe classic of looking at it and then getting distracted by something completely pointless. So, but I thought I'd mention it on here and say we will definitely consider that one.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
If there's like a quiet week at the cinema, that's something to fall back on.
Yeah,
there's plenty of stuff to mine there.
Oh man, absolutely. Yeah. I think that would be really interesting to tackle from like a screenwriting point of view. I'm no screenwriter, but I think it's the script is crucial with a twist and how you sort of
plot it,
weave it in before, and have the kind of clues and stuff. It's a shame because we talked about The Sixth Sense really recently. But I ever since rewatching that, I'm fascinated by films that have a twist that work without them. Yeah, you know what I mean, like that can be really quite challenging, I think. Because, you come out of the cinema, the first thing you're going to talk about is the twist, right? But like, there's quite a few films.
It's such a marketable narrative device, isn't it?
Oh yeah, like it generates word of mouth like you would not believe. Like, it's a kind of, you'll have to watch it to find out.
I mean, we're going a bit away from the Bikeriders here, but do you think the sort of prevalence of the internet has killed that a little bit? Because it's not so much word of mouth anymore.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
I mean, worth discussing that in greater detail.
I think so, yeah. Let's leave it for that episode, because otherwise we'll end up just doing that episode now.
yeah. Sorry, Jack, good idea.
Yeah.
Bikeriders, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I think a solid 6.
I'm always sort of hesitant to give numerical. I would sort of compare it to a sort of Sainsbury's or Tesco Ploughman sandwich.
Okay, yeah, just fine.
Like occasionally really good. Like if you give it a lot of time, you go, fucking hell. The robot maybe had like the mechanical equivalent of an aneurysm and sort of shat out more pickle.
Got the ratios just right. Yeah.
Like, and I have just while we're on the subject of supermarket sandwiches, I fucking hate it when they say no mayo, as if they're proud of it.
Yeah.
Stick some mayo in.
Put some. I like mayo. Don't advertise
Most decent people like mayo.
Yes.
Godless fools hate mayo. Come here for the hot takes, the hot culinary takes. But yeah, pretty average. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, film. Outro,
yeah.
Questing the cinematic void.
There we have it then.
There we have. Yeah, good. Really, I actually enjoyed that. I was a bit sort of apprehensive about talking about a film that I didn't really have any particular strong feeling about, but I think over the course of the discussion we found more and more stuff that sort of came to mind.
It made me really want to revisit Take Shelter and Midnight Special as well, and so I think it's high time to
get inside Nichols.
And
no, I agree. If you ever do that, invite me over.
Yeah, I will. Yeah,
please. Next week, Maxine.
Yes, with 3 X's.
Yes, Max.
Cool title.
Max.
Max.
No, it doesn't really work with that because you can't really extend it.
Max 16. Yeah, it sounds like an S.
Really looking forward to it. I know I tend to say that a lot, but I'm a real fan of the previous 2 films. I love X. To me, it's one of the best sort of more contemporary horror films. Recent memory, I really liked Pearl. I thought it was a really great way to continue the sort of mythology that he created, which is sort of very reliant on pre-existing sort of horror archetypes and mythology, and he's so good at it.
Okay. Yeah.
From the trailer, though, I will say it looks a lot more overt.
Yep, absolutely. Bigger budget.
It's
got the Night Stalker in it. It's kind of
woke. Like the sort of Kevin Bacon Chinatown thing,
The
Bates
era,
Motel.
yeah. Yes.
You know, like there's a lot of very overt nods to the sort of legacy of horror movies, which, you know, I'm not against because it could be done well, but it's sort of to stray into sort of contemporary Scream era for me. Which isn't necessarily always a good thing.
Yeah.
However, you know, I do try and avoid trailers by and large, but when that came on, I think on my Instagram feed like 3 months ago, I couldn't resist because I'm such a big fan. So,
Nice.
Reserve judgment, really looking forward to that. I guess we also can talk about a bit about horror movies, but more, I was thinking like the sort of grimmer end of horror.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm thinking like Giallo films or Gallo films, you know. In preparation, I ordered some of the films of Lucio Fulci.
Cool, okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, like ones I haven't seen. Like, I've only seen a couple of his because his name's come up a lot in the kind of conversation about Ty West's influences.
Yes. Okay.
So, yeah, looking forward to talking about those kinds of movies. I
more
love
like
a good
rusty, kind of rusty horror
yeah,
films.
just or like, you know, like just horror films that in that bracket of like really gory sort of, you know, the kind of movies that really push the envelope and you know, in that sort of video nasty era. And
cool, okay.
you know, what is the sort of critical and historical worth of those kinds of movies? You know, looking from our sort of period, you know, through our lens. You know.
Brilliant. Okay.
Because it feels like Ty West has already tried to channel that. Not so much with Pearl, but with X for sure.
I need to watch Pearl. I haven't seen it. I've seen X and I loved it. I've seen a similar film. I don't think it's not one of his, but Barbarian. That's very much in that.
I've still not seen that.
Oh, it's great. It's really, really good.
Okay.
I think if you liked X, you'll really like
Is it on
Barbarian.
Netflix?
I'm not sure. I know it's on the Italian Netflix because fellow cineboy Dan McKenzie showed it to me. I'm not sure if it's on the English one.
Okay, well, I can buy it on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Actually, I think Flynn, who's a regular listener, he's talked that film up a lot to me.
It is really good.
So yeah. Okay, I will give it a go.
Nice.
Lovely. In the meantime, thank you for getting to the end of yet another episode.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy your week, and we'll catch you next one.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.